Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast presented by the Six Pack Coverage Media Network. It's your host, Jeff Farrell, here with my co-hosts, Andrew Tanzi and Dave, coming back as our guest of the show for the divisional weekend here. Since we only have two games on tap, figure we'll get another opinion in here, and maybe he can talk some sense into all of us. How did what did we call him last weekend? Not no, last week it was divisional weekend. This is championship. Okay, yeah. So how was the divisional weekend for you guys?
Ended up being a pretty solid weekend. Needed a bounce back after wild card weekend, so I was pretty happy about that.
I was pretty up and down throughout the weekend. I had some good prop wins. The Kelsey, the Goddards came through. I was on the very, very wrong side of the Bengals game, and I knew it within the first 5 minutes. So that was a little bit. It was a little bit of a silver lining. I wasn't sweating anything at the end. A late Josh Allen turnover. It just went bad from the beginning, but turned back around in the last game of the week with the Niners, and was so happy to see them come through it. They're just such a fun team to root on. I really, really loved that the past 2 years.
I don't know that they deserve to win that one, to be honest with you. I felt like if I had to bet it again, I might take the points with the Cowboys if I had to bet it again. But
I think winning was fine. I don't know if they deserve the cover. I agree.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Maybe not covering, winning, yes. But I mean, honestly, like we were betting on Dak turnovers, and that is
part of the handicap.
It seemed like everyone kind of forgot about that after one good week against the Bucs, and that definitely played a huge part in it.
Shocker, he had miraculously morphed into a different quarterback after one game.
Yeah, correct.
Recapping last week, very nice on our favorite bets of the week. We both came away with a W. You got to win on the Chiefs and Eagles teaser heard around the world, getting them both down to -1.5, -2.5. So you go to 10-9 on the year with a win there. That one was a little bit scary when Mahomes went down. Did you freak out at all, or did you think Chad Henne could get it done?
I mean, that ended up being like arguably the difference in the game is Chad Henne's 98-yard touchdown drive. I definitely wasn't feeling good when Mahomes went out. You thought the Jaguars were just going to wreak havoc on Chad Henne, but that's the second time in the last, 3 years that he played meaningful snaps in a playoff game and came through. Yeah. Against the Browns, and the Browns was like late in the fourth quarter he had to come in. So
fourth down conversion.
Yeah.
They saved Chad Henne for when they need him the most.
Clutch as they come. I got to win on my favorite bet of the week, going back to even on the year 9-9 overall with the 49ers at -3.5. Like we said, maybe a little bit lucky there on the cover, but I still think they were the better team and capitalized on Dak Prescott turnovers as we thought they would. Long shots of the week. This may have been the most painful bet we lost all year. I was right there with you. I thought this was an awesome bet. Travis Kelce, 100 receiving yards, a touchdown, and the Chiefs money line, 17 targets and 14 catches, and the man can't get 100 receiving yards. Are you kidding me? I was ready to throw my TV out the window, and you see him get the last catch. At the time it was 99. They adjusted it to 98 yards, and you're like, there's no way.
Yeah, that was just so painful. You're like, there was one point he had like 7 catches for like 20-something yards. Yes. Like, is this really gonna? He scored the touchdown right away, so that was no sweat. After the Chiefs. I mean, obviously when Mahomes went down, you weren't feeling great about the Chiefs winning, but just brutal to lose that by 2 yards.
Yeah, that one was one of the all-time tough beats. I took a loss in my long shot as well. Unfortunately, Josh Allen, 60 rush yards. For some reason, I don't know if it was the UCL injury or something down the stretch, but it just felt like the Bills really kind of got rid of one of their best plays, which was Josh Allen breaking out and scrambling in these, when plays break down, he's just an absolute horse running through the field and no one can tackle him. And for some reason, he hasn't been running through the last few weeks of the season. We saw that again in the playoff game. And I think that's part of the reason why they had so much trouble moving the ball, is he would keep trying to get out of the pocket and force these throws downfield that weren't there instead of just scrambling for 10 or 15 yards at a time. So tough loss. Maybe they should have used it more.
Yeah. And you said it, like the difference in that game was the offensive line issues were obviously one of the big concerns coming in for the Bengals, but Burrow took the quick throws. He took what was there and was able to sustain drives, whereas Josh Allen's just forcing up deep balls in unnecessary situations, which seems to be a recurring theme with him. It definitely has cost him a few games this season. So he's always looking to make that big play as opposed to just take what the defense is giving him. And that was ultimately the difference in the game. And they couldn't really consistently sustain drive. So it felt like late in the game, it was just they were trying to push the ball downfield, so he wasn't even looking to run the ball.
Yeah. Prop sheet, not a good week there. We went 4-5 on the week, I believe I have us at. The quarterback rush yard overs did not go well. Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts both was an L in that game. And then the Bengals passing offense started out awesome and then didn't really have to throw. So Jamar Chase didn't get there. Overall, not a great week for the props.
Yeah.
All right, heroes and zeros of the week from the divisional playoff weekend. Dave, start us off with your hero of the week.
It's got to be the Niners and their defense for me. I just said it. It's been such a blast cheering for, betting on this team the past 2 playoff runs, and keep going back to that Fred Warner play. It's been talked about all over all week, but it's late third quarter. It's a tie game, 9-9. 3rd and 5 plus territory. The Dallas offense is starting to get some momentum, and you have Fred Warner streaking down the middle of the field, going stride for stride with CeeDee Lamb, making that huge play. Could have saved a touchdown, probably some very easy points, barring a Brett Maher fumble again or whatever you want to call what he does out there trying to kick the ball. But this 49ers
fumbles
defense,
kicks.
It just comes through in the biggest spots. They're just such a fun team to root for, and they got it done. You knew that putting Dak Prescott in uncomfortable situations was going to be the recipe to win this game when you're going against a tough Dallas defense, and they really came through. So it's got to be the Niners defense for me.
I don't even think you need to put Dak in uncomfortable situations. He just makes dumb throws, whether he's comfortable or uncomfortable. It's just, you look at some of the interceptions he throws, it's just, he's not under pressure. He just makes a stupid decision.
He could have thrown about 3 more. There was a couple that were dropped right in the defender's hands. That could have been even a worse stat line for him.
Purdy got a couple away with a couple thirds too. That one that got tipped in the red zone that was right in Diggs' hands was obvious. That was a huge miss, but
that was tipped. Though. I mean, that wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
Rue, what do you have here of the week?
I'm going with Nick Sirianni. To quote him, he knows what the F he's doing. He's got this team firing on all cylinders. Awesome. Everyone's buying in. This team's humming right now. So going with Nick Sirianni, feel really good about the Eagles right now. Should be a fun matchup this week, but was heavily invested in the Eagles in many ways this week, and they came through.
Yeah, I went with a different group for the Eagles. I went with the offensive line, correctly pointed out by you, Rue, on the podcast last week. The biggest mismatch in this game was in the trenches, specifically this Eagles dominant offensive line against the Giants defensive line. The Eagles ran the ball 44 times for 268 yards, 3 total touchdowns, 6.1 yards per carry. It was an absolute ass kicking in the trenches all game long, and that was really the key to the game. Hurts didn't even need to do anything through the air. They could just get whatever they wanted on the ground every time. So good job by you identifying that, and came to fruition.
Yes.
All right, zero of the week last week. Dave, who did you have?
Can only be one person, and that is Josh Allen. I mean, he laid, considering I was on the Bills, he laid just an absolute complete egg on the biggest stage that he could get. This was his chance to prove that he belongs in the conversation in the AFC with the Mahomes, with the Burrows, and couldn't get anything going on offense. Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs combined for 6 catches for 69 yards. I mean, it's just amazing when you think about 2 years ago, the Allen to Diggs connection was just absolutely unstoppable. And we were on that a lot early in the year. I don't know what
2 years ago. It was like 6 weeks ago. It was unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean,
they stopped using it. Like,
he had like 120 catches in their first year together. And it's funny when you think about I wonder how much of an impact Brian Daboll really had on this team, where early in his career, Josh Allen was the turnover prone guy, and then Daboll kind of lessened that a little bit, put him into that MVP conversation. Then as soon as he leaves, I didn't even realize this, but Josh Allen led the entire NFL in turnovers over the course of the season. And then you switch it with like a Daniel Jones, who was the turnover prone guy, and he finished the season with 5 interceptions. So you really have to think about what a huge impact Brian Daboll had. But Josh Allen, I already saw the betting lines for next year. The Bills are in the top 2 for Super Bowl odds again, which is just insane. Like, he needs to do a lot more to really get in that conversation. And just, he's my zero of the week, zero of the playoffs.
What was crazy to me about the game is you have the Bills here with home field advantage. You have snow pouring down. It's like, this is
perfect
field advantage. Yep. Buffalo Bills, and it looked like it favored the Bengals in the end. Looked like the conditions and everything worked in the Bengals here. So I'm actually with you on Josh Allen as my zero of the week. I actually ended up on the Bengals at +6. I was leaning the Bills on the podcast last week, but once the +6 came up, to me, it was just insanity. The money line went over +200, so I just had to throw everything out and buy into the Bengals. But I was on Josh Allen's rush yards with Jeff. So that was obviously a big loss. And I was still on the Bills team total. So Josh Allen's just inability to really get anything going on the offensive side, coming up small, like you said, in the biggest moment. And look, like last year in the playoffs when they lost to the Chiefs, obviously not on Josh Allen with the way that ended. But this is just a game, maybe you lose the game, but you got to have a better showing than you did. Sean McDermott, I think, deserves some criticism too. He obviously, his side of the ball defense is what allowed that drive last year by the Chiefs. And this year they didn't seem to have any answers for the Bengals offense. So Josh Allen, my 0 of the week with Sean McDermott getting the honorable mention.
Yep, went the same direction. Josh Allen putting up 10 measly points in the biggest game of his life as a 6-point favorite at home. Finished the postseason with 4 total touchdowns to 4 turnovers, had 3 interceptions and 3 total fumbles. Only lost one of the fumbles, barely squeaked by Skylar Thompson, and then gets steamrolled by Joe Burrow at home. Just an absolute embarrassment. Good luck ever getting out of the AFC with Mahomes and Burrow staring you in the face for the next 15 years. Good luck.
I'll give another honorable mention on 0 of the week to the NFL for selling those neutral site AFC Championship game tickets about 2 weeks early. I don't know what they were thinking with that, but it did lead us to the quote of the year by Joe Burrow right in that post-game press conference. Better send those refunds. Man, is that guy cool.
It was teed up for him. It really, they definitely teed that one up. Yeah.
Perfect.
Don't they do that for every single game in the playoffs? Like you can buy tickets for the playoffs ahead of time before the games even happen, like all the time.
I don't know.
Like in the NBA, if it's a 7-game series, you can buy tickets to game 7 before the series starts and they send you a refund. Like it's not like they did anything that's never been done before. I don't understand the problem with sending the refunds. Like they do that for every sporting event in the playoffs every year.
Listen, it was a cool moment.
Look, the quote was fine. I don't understand blaming the NFL for like doing something that every league does in the playoffs every year. Like the NFL didn't do anything wrong. All right, ready to get into these games? Any more conspiracy theories we need to go over?
No, please don't bring any of those theories on me. We're not.
All right, we'll skip over those conspiracy theories. All right, kick it off with the first game on the slate, the 3:00 Eastern game in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are 2.5-point home favorites. The over-under is 46.5. This is the matchup we've all been waiting for. The two best teams in the NFC, the two powerhouses collide. Injury notes on both sides. A.J. Brown was dealing with a bit of an injury in the game last week. He was expected to be questionable, but I think he actually practiced in full today, so I'm not sure if he's even going to have his designation. Sounds like he's going to play. And then for the Niners, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuel all did not practice today. It sounds like at least CMC and Deebo are trending towards playing. You never know with Elijah Mitchell, but I think both these teams are going to be pretty healthy for the most part. Rue, I'll start with you. Do you have a play here on side or total of this matchup?
Yeah, I'm on the Eagles. Bought into them right when the line opened up. I'm fine with them under a field goal. I don't want to oversimplify it too much, but for me, when it boils down to it, I just simply think the Eagles have more advantages in the game. On both sides of the ball, you have great offensive lines and great defensive lines. You could argue San Francisco will have success running the ball, which was the weakness of the Eagles. But for what it's worth, that was a lot of when the Eagles were getting gashed on the ground. It was without Jordan Davis. I mean, their defensive rushing statistics are night and day when he's on the field versus when he's not. And we did see San Francisco really struggle to run the ball for 3/4 of the game versus Dallas. Now, credit to them, they stuck with it and they were able to put together some huge drives running the ball late in the game. But I think this Eagles defense will be ready for it. And then you kind of look at the passing games and the quarterbacks. This to me is also advantage for the Eagles. The Eagles secondary had some blow-up games late in the season. They led up to 40 points to Dak, and Dak shredded them. But they were missing 2 key pieces of the secondary. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was back last week. Avonte Maddox, I heard he could be back this week as well. Obviously, being at full strength makes all the difference. And then we kind of talked about earlier, we've seen Purdy get away with some mistakes, especially when he's under pressure. And the Eagles are a defensive line, as we know, can get pressure with just the front 4. And the Niners have allowed a 100-yard receiver in 3 out of the last 4 games. I think Hurts' legs, again, will be just a major factor, allowing him to get outside the pocket against this defensive line that can generate pressure. And then lastly, to me, I'm a big third down and red zone guy. Big discrepancy. So the Eagles rank number 3 on third down and in the red zone. Niners defense, as great as it is, 15th on third down and 18th in touchdown conversion percentage in the red zone. For what it's worth, San Francisco's offense is 5th in third down, but only 20th in the red zone. In a game this close with teams this great, converting in the red zone and converting on third down, that could end up being the difference in the game. And then you kind of look at who the Niners have faced this year. They haven't really faced a true running quarterback since week 1 when they played Justin Fields in a monsoon. They did limit him to 28 yards. They played Mariota in week 6. He rushed for 50 yards, but they really haven't faced anyone near the mobility of Hurts. So 2 great teams, but I think slight advantages go to the Eagles here. So I'm backing the Eagles under a field goal.
I'm with Ro on this one. Yeah, I'm with Ro. I think this is definitely the matchup that we wanted to see in the NFC Championship game. Yeah. I would say these teams are a bit more evenly matched than you're making them sound. I mean, you talked about the offensive defensive lines are pretty comparable. There's playmakers all over both sides of the defense. The Eagles corners definitely have the advantage, but the skill position players on offense, you look at the Kittle, Debo, McCaffrey, and then Sanders, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, they can all go stride for stride with one another. So I think there's a lot of talent on both sides of the field. I think what this really comes down to, though, is Brock Purdy going into this type of environment. He's done a great job in these past, what's it been now, 8 games of managing these games. He put up a lot of big scoring games in the first couple weeks, and you started to see that slow down a little bit in the last couple weeks, specifically with his production. I know they scored a ton against the Seahawks, but he didn't look great in that first half. He didn't really look great that entire Dallas game when you really put some pressure on him. You had Micah Parsons coming at him the entire game. So I think when you can get him into that uncomfortable situation, going into such a hostile environment like Philly in this road game, I think the Eagles are going to be able to take care of business, and it's going to come down to the matchup of Jalen Hurts being able to outduel Brock Purdy. It's amazing when you think about this playoff run for the Eagles, and all they have to do to get to the Super Bowl is beat Daniel Jones, and Brock Purdy really couldn't be set up much better. So I'm riding with the Eagles full game spread. I also like them in the first half. As I mentioned, the Niners were up 9-8 versus the Cowboys last week, and then they were down 17-16 versus the Seahawks in that playoff game. I don't see them starting out too hot in this game. Their style is more just stay with you for the first half of the game and then try and break through that defense in the second half. So I don't see them starting out too hot, and I think the Eagles can keep pace the whole game. So I like them both first half and full game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I think my favorite angle was the Eagles' first half or even first quarter, kind of along the lines of what you said. We know the Eagles were the best first half team in the league all season. They finished the year 13-5 against the spread, which was the best record in the league. The Niners 3-1 in the first half against the spread under Purdy in his 7 starts so far. And like you said, the 2 starts this year for the Niners in the playoffs at least have been a little bit slower, and they've been kind of like more conservative game plan to start off. Then they try and wear you down and try and come back in the second half or really beat you down that way. So I think that the Eagles early makes sense. I think the spread for the full game is probably right. Maybe Eagles -3 is the right number, but I think 2.5 is pretty close, especially since the juice on a lot of it's towards the Niners. So I guess it'd be a lean to the Eagles for the full game, but I think them in the first quarter and first half is my favorite look.
Okay.
Maybe a slightly into the under too. I could see it being a little bit of lower scoring game, but it's also scary. I don't think I'm going to bet it. I feel like it's scary playing it under with these offenses.
Both teams are capable of putting up 21 points and a half, so makes me a little nervous still.
I think you just have to feel good. Like I feel like in terms of late in games, Purdy hasn't been put in a ton of pressure situations. So if the Eagles do get like a first half lead and you're kind of forcing their hand to throw the ball in the second half, Shanahan's done a great job of kind of scheming an offense where it's not putting Purdy in uncomfortable situations, not making him make, a ton of tough throws. And look, I don't want to take anything away from Purdy. He's played great, but we haven't really had to see him, maybe the Raiders game, but the Raiders is a little different than going against the Eagles. But I think if the Eagles get a lead in the second half and you put this offense in an uncomfortable position where they can't just grind out a long drive on the ground, I think you got to feel pretty good about being on the Eagles at that point.
And look, I know you guys are going to complain and try and kick me off the podcast for this ridiculous take, but I would also like to mention the Eagles have an extra day of rest, and the Niners are traveling cross-country to the game. That matters. That matters. An extra day of rest and a cross-country travel, that adds up.
An extra day of rest. Come on.
I'm not even going to edit.
At least you said
extra
an
day
extra
to game plan.
At least you said an extra. It's not an extra day to game plan because
It
Eagles didn't
is.
know.
You can
They
still
didn't
put
know the-
together your game plan. It's not like you don't know you're playing a football game. You can still design plays
Yeah,
for
but
your
you
offense.
design based on who you're playing against.
Not entirely. You can still run a run play to the left side of the line just because you're going against the Niners instead of the Cowboys.
You need an extra
can't
day
run
to
left
say
now.
run to the left.
You heard it here,
It's a little
folks.
bit more involved than that.
If the Eagles win this game, it's because they had an extra 24 hours to prepare.
Watch out. Those runs to the left side are going to be devastating because of that.
First play of the game.
All right. Anyone have any prop looks in this one? I admittedly don't have a ton of props this week. I do have a couple looks in this game, but not a big prop week for me this week. Do you guys have any looks?
I have a couple. I took Devontae Smith over 65.5 receiving yards prior to last week where they really didn't need to throw the ball in the fourth quarter. He did have 61 yards last week, so not too far off from this line.
Led the team.
Yeah, but he was over this number in 4 straight games. He averaged 70 yards per game during the regular season. We already talked about the Niners defense that, if there is a weakness, it's the secondary. They're actually 18th in DVOA versus wide receiver 2. Run defense is stout, so I'm expecting the Eagles need to get it going through the air. So Devontae Smith over 65.5 yards. And I also don't mind taking A.J. Brown over 69.5 yards once we get some clarification on his health. Maybe you split a unit between the two guys and hope one goes over and maybe both. He went over in 6 straight games prior to last week, averaged 76 yards per game during the regular season. Niners, as I mentioned, allowed 3 100-yard wide receiver ones in the last 4 games. So I think could be a good game for both Eagles receivers.
You made my points on A.J. Brown. I'm on his receiving yards, receptions, and his longest reception over 25.5. If you take away last week where the Eagles didn't really have to throw the ball in the second half, he's hit this number over 25.5 in 6 straight games, and it's also been 7 of 9. Makes you a little bit nervous because you saw it last week. He ran that deep route and then just went right off the field. So there's obviously something bothering him. His quote today was, "I'm good." So I'm just going to trust what he's saying and see that he's good. So I'm over the
you can't trust players. You can't trust what these guys say.
Some players
yeah,
can.
Dave, you just set them up. Dave, you just set yourself up.
I'll remember that in a few minutes. We can trust players when they say they're good to play. Imagine that concept. I'm going to end up on the kind of rounding out the trio of Eagles skill position over players here. I kind of like Miles Sanders. I get that it's obviously the toughest matchup you can have, but 50.5, that is a massive adjustment. This is down 16 yards from where we took it last week and we went over by 30 yards. So Sanders was over this number 13 out of 17 games in the regular season. I excluded week 18 because he basically rested the entire second half, only at 11 carries. But we saw Kenneth Walker went 15 for 63 against the Niners in wildcard weekend. Josh Jacobs 17 for 69. Even Brian Robinson mustered his way up to 58 yards down the stretch of the season. So I get that the Niners have a good run defense, but if we're expecting this to be a close game, the Eagles are going to run the ball. We know their offensive line can have success against just about anybody. So I thought 50.5 was just a little bit too disrespectful for Miles Sanders. So you know what we should do? We should just play overs on the entire Eagles offense, Dave. How about that?
That worked well last week.
It worries me a little. It worries me a little because we've seen so many times if the Eagles don't have success on their first 5 runs of the game, they'll willingly abandon the run and just.
But that's the thing. Even when you go to these games where they do abandon the run, sometimes Sanders still finishes with 55 yards in those games where they abandon the run. It's not like you need him to get 80 yards.
Yeah, you're right.
I just thought the number adjusted too much. If it was 58.5, I wouldn't touch it.
It was 55.5, so it dropped a fair amount.
It's 50.5 right now on FanDuel and DraftKings. So yeah,
there's got to be a buy point. So I guess you're right.
Yeah. I was also looking at Brock Purdy under passing yards. This was 219.5. He's been pretty 50-50 on this. So 4-3 to the under in 7 starts, 214 versus Dallas last week, 332 against Seattle. But the Eagles pass defense has been incredible this season, only allowing 204 pass yards per game. Opposing quarterbacks are 13-5 to the under on this number this season. And I really just kind of expect the Niners game plan to be try and establish the run as much as possible early, try and take the pressure off of Brock Purdy. I'm expecting the Niners to come out a little bit slow here. I know me and Dave said we like the Eagles early in the game, so I could see them struggling a little bit to move the ball. So I just thought this one was a little bit too high. I was expecting this maybe in the low 200s. So 219.5 is an under for me.
Okay.
Only thing that makes me nervous is They really haven't been down late in these games and needing to throw the ball. Niners are usually running the ball the entire fourth quarter. So what's it going to be based on the game script that we think it's going to be? The Eagles are leading and the Niners are kind of playing catch up.
I don't know if they're
how
leading
that's
by
gonna
that
affect
much.
it,
Do you need to abandon the run? Like, I don't expect the Eagles to be
Yeah.
up by 20 points in the fourth quarter. If it's a 7-point game and they have the ball, they can still run the ball plenty.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's possible.
I don't hate it.
All right. Anything left to say on this game?
No, I'll take the next game. Bengals headed to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Injuries on the Bengals side, obviously missing their three key offensive linemen. Injuries on the Chiefs side, absolutely nothing to report. If you ask Jeff, Patrick Mahomes, despite leaving last game, despite reports of him having a high ankle sprain, is 100% good to go. No effects in this game.
As said by Patrick Mahomes himself.
Jeff, what do you got?
Also, the weather, there's projected to be some snow in this game, and it is going to be very cold, but probably nothing that's going to impact the total of the game significantly here. Let me talk to you about what I have described as potentially the greatest betting opportunity of Patrick Mahomes' playoff career.
Strap in,
Let me
everyone.
talk about the Chiefs as a home underdog in the AFC Championship game here. Let's start off with the number. The number here has adjusted far too much than it needs to off this injury. With a fully healthy Patrick Mahomes, I think you guys would agree this is going to be Chiefs -4, maybe -3.5, but somewhere in that range.
No.
The Bills were just -6 last week. The Chiefs and the Bills are pretty evenly rated. Yet you're telling me it was going to be 3? There's no chance. It was going to be 3.5 or 4. We now go through the key number of 3, down to a pick 'em, out the other side. This was as high as Chiefs +2.5 yesterday, which I bet more on there. Now it's back down to I think Chiefs +1 is that kind of the consensus. So I just think the number is adjusted too much. We've seen star quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Justin Herbert miss games where the spread adjusted 6 or 7 points for the backup quarterback playing. You're telling me Mahomes is going to play and it's going to adjust 5 points? Like, I just think that's a bridge too far here. I think that it's a little bit disrespectful to Andy Reid and Bieniemy and Mahomes and its offensive mindset to not be able to come up with a game plan that can scheme around this Patrick Mahomes injury. It's a little bit different dealing with it in the moment last week. Like you saw them run these like stretch run plays that he couldn't even get off that they should have been running. I think they can have a better game plan with a full week to prepare here.
Yeah, like they did the last 3 times they played the Bengals. It's when Mahomes was healthy. You're right. They should be able to draw up a game plan.
Look, it's been a tough matchup for them. There's no doubt about it. The Bengals have their number right now. Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, has taken away Travis Kelce in a lot of these matchups, and that's really been a key. Jamar Chase went ham on them 2 games ago. They couldn't stop him. And look, they have the number right now. But I still think that this is just the Chiefs at home. As an underdog, I just think it's too much. And then if we look at the on the field matchup, I think this Bengals offensive line, this is the week that those injuries are really going to manifest.
Time out. I'm stopping.
Week?
I was waiting for this
what?
from you. Because last week you specifically said on this podcast when making your case for the Bengals about how it's so overblown, the injuries on the offensive line, how they made a run to the Super Bowl last year, all this stuff about how it's not a big deal. But now, folks, it fits Jeff's narrative perfectly. So we're gonna plug that right in the story here. And now this is the week.
Can I tell you why? You didn't even let me tell you why.
Go ahead, tell me why. The Chiefs are second in pressure rate as opposed to the Bills, who are like 8th in pressure rate.
The Bills defense outside of Von Miller, who still leads the team in sacks despite missing the last 9 games of the season. The Bills ranked outside the top 12 in sacks and pressure rate this year. The Chiefs were number 1 in the NFL in pressures on the season, number 2 in the NFL in sacks beyond only the Philadelphia Eagles. Chris Jones, defensive tackle, all-pro, quietly finished with 15.5 sacks this season. I think this is the matchup where the Bengals offensive line presents more problems. And yes, I made the case that it was overblown last week. That's because I felt like the spread was getting inflated because of that injury. It's a lot different when you're catching 6 points on the road against the Bills than when you're laying points on the road against Mahomes. So I think that the number just like if the Bengals were getting 3.5 points, or yes, I'd be on the Bengals again, but it's just a different scenario here where I think that the Chiefs defensive line presents problems that the Bills didn't, because they didn't get any pressure on Burrow at all last week. And then on offense, the Chiefs, yes, Mahomes isn't going to have the mobility that he normally had. He's also played with injuries before. We saw him come back from a high ankle sprain, I think in 2019, the game he came back through for 440 yards and 3 touchdowns. We have videos of him in practice today, stretching, jogging, running all around the field. I think he's going to be okay. I think this is a little bit overblown here. I'm all over the Chiefs here. And even last week, after the ankle injury, he ranked number 1 in all quarterbacks in EPA per dropback after sustaining the ankle injury and coming back in the second half. Got the win against the Jaguars. I get this Bengals defense a little bit better here, but I'm on the Chiefs.
So just so everyone's clear, Jeff grabbed the Chiefs when at -2.5. So the entire week he's been convincing himself.
-1, I have +2.5, and I have +115 on the money line, and I have never felt better about it. I am so right about this game, and I cannot freaking wait for Sunday. I can't wait.
Look, I agree with you that the +2.5.
You agree with me? Okay.
No, the plus. Okay. No, I don't agree that I wouldn't have. I didn't like the Chiefs series. I think the Bengals win this game, but +2.5 may be a little bit drastic of a move. But I think you were silly for not grabbing the Bengals at +3 at the open, because there was no way that was sticking around. You even said you'd bet the Bengals at +3.5. So I don't know why you didn't grab them at.
I honestly feel like Chiefs -3 is the perfect number. Like I honestly think that should be the point spread. I saw Bengals +3. I stared at it and I said, no, I think that's about right. I don't think there's enough value. It was also -120 by the time that I saw it, so it wasn't like a -110. But I had to play a little bit more juice for it. But I think that's the right number in the game. I do.
Look, I get your point about the offensive line. I know the Chiefs are great at getting pressure and everything. We've seen 2 weeks now, the Bengals have a solid game plan. Well, maybe not so as much against the Ravens, but whatever. Last week, we'll talk. They had a great game plan to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quick. I already said he was taking what the defense gave him. It's tough for a defense, mind you, a Chiefs defense that is already not great in the secondary, to cover 3 great receivers and a solid tight end. And those quick passes are there. We saw Mixon get going on the ground. Now, I'm not going to count on that because Mixon's hot.
I don't know where the heck that came from.
Yeah, but we saw them have this game plan to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quick to alleviate any pressure. And to me, like, even if Mahomes is playing and he's not 100%, which I don't think he will be, even if he's, let's say, generous 85%, they can downplay this injury all they want. High ankle sprain sideline guys for weeks. And we're talking about his back foot that he's planning on, that he's pushing off of to make throws. I get it. It's Patrick Mahomes. He's still going to make great plays. But say Mahomes is at 80 or 85%. I think Joe Burrow at 100% is a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes at 80 or 85%. So there goes probably the biggest advantage the Chiefs have in this game in Patrick Mahomes. So
okay, they're also the ones getting points. They're at home and they have the better.
They're not getting points anymore. We're talking about current.
They're getting a point. They're underdogs.
+1. I mean, come on. It's a pick 'em for all intents and purposes. And we look at the Bengals skill players, bigger advantage versus the Chiefs secondary than the Chiefs skill players versus the Bengals secondary. You already made my case that they've done a great job at scheming out Kelce in these matchups, and that was with Tyreek, and that was with Tyreek Hill previously.
Well, even earlier this season.
But previously, I'm saying you didn't have to worry about Tyreek Hill. Now all you have to worry about is Kelce. Obviously, the other guys are going to make their plays and whatever. And then like the whole Burrow under pressure thing, just to go back to that, I saw some tweet that his senior year of college, when they won the national championship, he was pressured like 150 times throughout the year. Now, obviously it's college, it's a different game, but maybe at some point we just say Joe Burrow is great under pressure. Like, it doesn't affect him.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
Great quarterback.
He also got sacked like 9 times in the Titans game last year, and which they won. Like,
he's the most sacked quarterback in the league in the last 2 years. I mean,
so how is that your argument against betting the Bengals? That
I mean, getting pressure is still a good thing. It can still lead to turnovers. I'm not saying Burrow's going to have a bad game, but if you're getting pressure on the Burrow and versus not getting, you're more likely to force turnovers or sacks or big plays.
I just think when you look at this game, the one advantage at full strength the Chiefs have is Mahomes. And when he's not 100%, I think the Bengals are overall the better team defensively, skill position, offensively. They obviously have the disadvantage in the trenches on the offensive side of the ball, but I just think the Bengals are the better team here. So at a pick 'em, if you missed the 3, if you didn't grab the 3, I'm fine taking the Bengals.
Dave,
I'm with Ro on the Bengals. I think it's insane that you would have passed on the Bengals +3, even if you when you're looking at that game and you know that the other quarterback has a high ankle sprain, possibility at the time when the line came out that he misses the game. I don't know how you don't just grab that right away based on the closing line value.
He wasn't going to miss the game. They said he was playing next week.
Yeah, but
they
you
said
can
it
cash
4
out,
seconds after the game. Like, the spread
on.
came out while the final press conference was still on.
The Chiefs played the day before. They already came out
right.
that morning and said he's going to play next week. And I believe them. For some reason, you guys are
but how many
thinking
times
that there's some conspiracy theory going on. He's not going to play. I believe them
enough
the
with the conspiracy theories. How many times have we seen it where a quarterback gets injured in a game, they finish it, and then the next day the injury swells up and it gets worse? Like, it wasn't insane to think that he could miss the game just because he said a week prior, hey, I think I'm going to play, doesn't mean he's automatically going to play. I thought there
when
was
does a coach or quarterback ever come out early in the week and said
we
like,
make
I'm
fun
not
of that
playing?
all the
come
time,
on.
the coach speak. So I agree that when the spread got
he
to
literally
plus,
came out himself and said it didn't swell up as much as I thought. I'm going to play in the game. I don't know what more I needed to hear from Patrick Mahomes. That was enough for me. I don't know what you guys wanted, but that was enough for me on Sunday.
well, I agree that when it got to plus 2.5 Chiefs, that was a little bit insane. If that got to a 3, I was going to try and middle that myself because that's just insane.
Yeah.
But you also talk about like the Andy Reid and the Chiefs are going to have time to scheme up a game plan for Mahomes because they know he's injured.
Yo,
the Bengals
extra day of preparation.
Day.
Don't forget it.
Didn't even add that in. Extra day of preparation. Let's
but
go.
The Bengals have that same advantage. So we keep acting like it's such this huge advantage for the Chiefs because they're going to be able to scheme up this game plan that involves Mahomes not being as mobile. Why can't the Bengals do the same thing to force him to try and be mobile, force him to go on that back foot and make some plays, not these just little dump off throws like he was doing all last week? After he went down and came back in the game, I don't think he was pressured even once in that Jaguars game. He had the one hobbled run scramble for a first down. There really wasn't any pressure on him the entire game. So I'm interested to see what the Bengals defensive coordinator can really draw up to put some pressure on Mahomes and make him uncomfortable in the pocket there, knowing that he has an injury. Regardless of what he says, you can't have a high ankle sprain and then be 100% the next week going into it. So I think there's opportunity on the Bengals. And when you look at the spread, what were they last year in the AFC Championship game? Were they
-7?
Okay, so last year they're -7.
-7,
and then they were
pretty
2.5 in Cincinnati this year. And the Chiefs are losing both those games. So there has to be a point where we're upgrading the Bengals in this matchup, whether or not it's
Great,
Patrick
I need to upgrade them
Mahomes.
5.5 points.
But what number do you upgrade it then? You know that they have the Chiefs number.
It's not 5.5
You know that
points.
Mahomes has an injury. Like, at what point do you just say that, yeah, Joe Burrow belongs in the same class as Patrick Mahomes in this matchup? And he's not 100%. So like Rue said, I'll take the 100% Joe Burrow over the 85% Patrick Mahomes. Part of what makes him great is his ability to extend plays for 30 seconds, run around, find an open Travis Kelce. So if the Bengals defense is able to limit Kelce, force Mahomes to make plays to other guys, I like the Bengals in this matchup. I think them catching points was a crazy opening line. I would still take them at a pick 'em as well.
Okay. I think we've stated our cases. Can't wait to see who comes out on top.
It'll be a heated day in our group chat.
So it's been a heated week. Every time I say something, it's, you guys jumping all over me. Anyone have any props in this game? I looked through everything here. I couldn't find anything that I really loved, to be honest. The Chiefs receiving core is always a little bit tough outside of Kelce. Did you guys have anything that stood out to you?
One for me, I'm going to look at Kadarius Toney. 34.5 was the receiving line I got him at. He's been more involved last week in the screen game.
Why don't they use him more? He's like a little bit more involved, but not really.
Right.
Like, I don't get it.
He had 7 targets, finished 5 for 36 last week. I think this is the perfect opportunity when last week, all they had to do was throw to Kelce across the middle. They didn't really need a true game plan for that. Yeah. That was the plan of attack going in. That's all you needed to do. I think
only
this
for
is
5
the week.
yards a pop too.
I think this is the week where you get to see Andy Reid work some of that magic, do a little ring around the rosy in the huddle, and then do something to Kadarius Toney.
Especially Andy Reid magic. I like
especially by the goal line. He's had a couple these sweep red zone carries, one last week, 3 in week 18. So they're starting to use him more. It does make me nervous, but it's still a low enough number, 34.5. So I like him in the prop game.
Okay, I like that.
I am going with Ja'Marr Chase over 82.5 receiving yards and over 6.5 receptions. He went over the yards in half the regular season games he played. Receptions, he went over 9 out of 12. He went 7 for 97 versus the Chiefs earlier in the year. For what it's worth, last year in the playoffs against them, all he did was go 11 for 266 and 3 touchdowns. Chiefs are ranked 31st in DVOA versus wide receiver ones, allowing the 3rd most yards per game. So definitely love a big game from Ja'Marr Chase here.
All right. I think those both make sense. Anyone have anything left to say before we close it out with our long shots and favorite bets of the week?
No, it's weird only having 2 games to go over.
I know. I feel like we're missing something.
Yeah.
Does it seem disingenuous that 3 Eagles fans all said that the Eagles were going to win? Is that a problem? Should
I
one
don't
of us
know.
have picked the Niners?
I feel like throughout the season we've shown we aren't biased Eagles.
See, I feel like we didn't even get a chance this year because the Eagles were just so good. It was like I'm betting them every week because like there was no time to fade them. They were just good the whole time. Like I swear I don't bet the Eagles every week, but they've just been so good this year.
The people
Not a
have
lot
been
of under opportunities.
Yeah, the people have been with us know.
Yeah, we try not to just bet the Eagles because we're fans. I think we legitimately just think that the better team.
We put our real money on this stuff, so we're not just betting this. We don't bet with our hearts. We bet with our minds. At least I except Jeff sometimes, but
what's that mean? Get out of here. All right, ready for long shots of the week? Our favorite bet on the board, priced at odds of plus 200 or greater. Dave, guest of the show, kick us off with something good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the AJ Brown route.
Oh, that was mine. I like it.
I was deciding between the touchdown, the money line, but I'm gonna go with it. AJ Brown, 80 receiving yards, Eagles money line at plus 262 right now on FanDuel. Rue talked about it. That's the way the Niners can be beat. Number one receivers. You saw what CD Lamb did last week. So it would be very unfortunate if he had to leave this game with an injury, but I'm going to trust AJ Brown to be out there, do what you know he can do. We've seen some of those huge plays throughout the entire season. So give me 80 receiving yards and an Eagles money line.
I'm going to co-sign Dave's long shot. I went AJ Brown, 50 yards, a touchdown, and the Eagles money line. So we're clearly on the same page here. We saw similar wide receivers. Devontae Adams, 7 for 153 and 2. DK Metcalf, very similar build to AJ Brown, 10 for 136 and 2 on Super Wildcard Weekend. Like we said, a pretty quiet game last week, but still had a team high 10 targets in Week 18 against the Giants, 4 for 95. I think this is a great bounce back spot. His anytime touchdown price plus 155. I included that as one of the legs. That was trading around plus 110, plus 115 towards the end of the season. Finished with 11 total receiving touchdowns. It was pretty quiet down the stretch. Only one in his last 5 games, but I think he gets back in the end zone this week. Gets back in the back for a big game here. So I'm going to buy on the AJ Brown train right with Dave here.
All right.
Ro, do you have an AJ Brown long shot for us as well?
I do not. I'm going with another wide receiver that we just talked on. I'm going with Ja'Marr Chase. I'm actually going to go double up here and do my favorite bet of the week and my long shot. I'm going to build on it. So my favorite bet, I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase over 82.5 receiving yards. Like I said, Chiefs has really struggled against wide receiver ones this year, ranked 31st in DVOA. See if we can get a recreation of his playoff performance from last year where he went for over 200 yards. So favorite bet, I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase over 82.5 yards. For my long shot, I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase 100 yards and a touchdown. Obviously the same reason here, but we'll take him to score a touchdown as well. That's right now plus 310 on FanDuel.
Nice.
Okay. Well, combo action.
Yes.
All right, Dave, what do you have for your favorite bet of the week?
Gotta keep it going. So I'm going with the Eagles. I'm going to say first half. Right now it's -1.5, so that's what I'll take it at. Like I said, I think it's going to be tough for Brock Purdy to come into this hostile environment and have success early in that game. We've talked about how good the Eagles have been all year in the first and especially the second quarter versus how the Niners are usually just keep it close throughout the first half and try and wear you down in the second half. We've seen a lot of those explosive second half performances from the Niners. I like the Eagles to try and take care of business in the first half, get an early lead, and try and sit out in the second half. So right now, the best number is -1.5 in the first half.
Can I interest you in the Eagles first half and to win the game? It's plus 125 right now.
I already have enough on the Eagles to win the game, but yeah, that would be of interest to me too.
Okay.
I like it. All right. For my favorite bet of the week, I'm going to go with none other than the Kansas City Chiefs +1. Give me Patrick Mahomes, home dog in the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead. What I've described as the greatest playoff betting opportunity of Patrick Mahomes' career. You don't want to miss this one. Grab the Kansas City Chiefs. The ankle's going to be fine. The man himself has come out and said it. I've seen him jog on the field, and he looks great, fast as ever. No problems going to happen here. He gets his revenge on Joe Burrow, and Reigns gets free.
What?
Good closing.
And he's going to win the game.
All right, let's make a little bet here. So if we'll go head to head, Chiefs, Bengals. The loser has to wear a paper bag over their head for the Super Bowl podcast next week.
Love it. I'm in.
All right, let's do it.
I don't have any paper bags, but I will acquire one if need
All right,
be.
we'll go to Whole Foods and get some.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
Just what I needed. More action on this game because I don't have enough on the Chiefs already. Let's go.
Oh, man. I can't wait to see. Honestly, we'd be doing everyone a favor putting a paper bag over your head. So for anyone who watches on YouTube, you're welcome.
It's going to be unfortunate when the Chiefs win and you're coming with a bag on your head. Dave, I want you in a bag too next week.
All right.
All right. Anything left? Anyone have anything left to say?
No.
Other than me not being able to talk today, that's been fun.
Last podcast of the year next week. Season, I guess.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Sorry, 2 weeks. Yeah.
So what's the plan? We're off next week, then we'll come back the following week and do it?
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't even remember when they like posted stuff last year. I would guess props could come out whenever, but not
this week's stuff was out on there was props out, I think, Monday night this week.
That's what I'm saying. Do they post them Monday, even though the game's not till the next week? I don't know.
We'll have to see.
When are the awards announced? Is it the week before the Super Bowl, or is it?
I think it's the Saturday before. I think it's the Saturday before.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I need the award announcements.
Yeah.
Nick Gates was not listed as a comeback player of the year. Thank God. They listed the finalists today.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Gino. Come on, Gino. All right. Thank you, everyone out there, for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at BetRightPod. Smash the like button on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. The link to the YouTube video will be in the description of the podcast. The prop sheet will be posted on the Twitter page prior to the start of the first game. From Jeff and Rue and Dave, we are the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast because every time you bet with us, you bet right.